In this video, we're going to talk about how to tram in the head of a milling machine. If I have a milling machine that has a head where I can rotate the angle, so if I wanted to, I could rotate the head on an angle like this to drill a compound angled hole, I need to ensure that the head is perfectly trammed up and down. Okay, so I want it at 90 degrees to the table. If I don't have it at 90 degrees to the table, so if I have it off any little bit, what can happen is I can have an uneven flat surface, so it would be kind of on a taper if I'm doing a face milling operation. If I'm drilling holes at different depths, I could have the location off. So if I drop my knee down, so if I center drill, drop my knee down, put a drill in, the hole locations might not line up because my head's on an angle. So it's very important when I get a new machine, if I crash a machine, if I offset this at all, that I want to check the tramming of the head. I could also just do this monthly, weekly, depending on how much the machine gets used, as just a preventative maintenance task. So how I tram in the head, I like to use a bearing race because it gives me a nice flat surface that I can consistently have a dial reading on. If I don't have one, I could just dial right on the table. So to get started, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the bearing race so it's roughly in the middle of my spindle travel. So if I look, I'm just gonna position it so it's centered in the movement of my spindle. So I want it to be equal parts away on either side. I'm gonna raise the table up and bring my bearing race closer to my dial. So I've brought it a bit closer, and if I spin this around, you can see that it's not really close to touching on this side, but if I spin it around, it's on the inside of the bearing race here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move it, and it's getting a little bit closer here. So if I look, it's touching, it would be touching the bearing race here. It wouldn't be touching it on this side here. So I'm just gonna move it a little bit that way. So if I look, touching over here, it would be touching over here, touching here, and then also touching on the back side. So if I look at my dial now, I also want to make sure it's sitting at least on a bit of an angle here. If I had this dial sticking flat like this, what could happen is it could be touching on the stem and not right on the ball of my finger dial here. So I want to make sure that it's just pointing down ever so slightly. So now that I'm ready to check the tramming of my head, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise my knee up here, and I have a little bit of preload on the dial here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spin it side to side, and I can see I'm at 5 here, and I'm not even touching on this side here. So I need to rotate my head so it swings this way, okay? Now, how I control that is I have 4 bolts here that hold the head in place that direction. I have these just loosened off. I want a little bit of tension on them, not too much. And if I look on the side here, I also have a scale with 0 to get me close. And then this right here controls the tilt of my head. Now I can adjust this until I start to see just a touch of movement on my dial down here. I apologize for the glare. You might not be able to see it super clearly. But as soon as I start to see a little bit, there's a little bit too much there. So I'm gonna have to tilt it back the other way. So I'm just gonna move this ever so slightly. And now what I can do is I can spin this around and check. So if I look here, I'm at about 12-ish on my dial. So again, I'm at about 12 here. I'm gonna spin it around. And if I look here, I'm at about, I don't know, 14, 13 and a half. Again, I'm gonna swing it back. About 11 and a half, 12. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swing this and I'm gonna split the difference. So I'm at 11 and a half here. I'm just gonna rotate this until I split the difference. So I wanna go to about 13-ish. So I'm going to just adjust that ever so slightly. So I might have overshot that a smidge here. So I'm at 13-ish here. So I'm gonna swing now around, to my other side, and I overshot it a little bit because I'm at 15 here. So now I'm gonna go back to the other side and do an adjustment. So I'm at about 15 here. So I want to, again, split that difference. I'm just gonna bring it to about, let's say 12 and a half. Okay, so I have 12 and a half on this side. Now I'm gonna spin it around. I'm at about, sorry, the glare, I'll try to get it without the glare here. I'm at about 11 and a half here. So I'm a thou and a half off. So I'm gonna spin it back around. Hope you're not getting dizzy. And now I need to split the difference here. Oops, wrong way there. So I'm gonna bring that to 12. And again, when I'm adjusting, all I'm doing is I just have my wrench in here and I'm just ever so slightly putting a little bit of force on here. So I'm not putting much force on here. So again, I'm at about 12 here. I'm gonna spin it around. I'm at about 12 here. So now what I can do is I can retighten the bolts here. And like your car, I want to do it in a star pattern, okay? And then once I have these tightened, I'm gonna have to recheck to make sure my head didn't shift at all. Okay, so I'm just gonna come and I'm just gonna ever so slightly start snugging these up. So I just have a tiny bit of force on these here, and then I'm gonna recheck it. So what I like to do is I like to put a little bit of tension on the bolts, check it, and then I should still be able to just do fine adjustments from here. Okay, so if I look, I'm still at my 12. It might have shifted a little bit. I'm at 12 and a half. And if I come around here, I'm at 11 and a half. So I did have a little bit of movement in this dial. So now I'm gonna correct that by moving my adjustment up here. So this is just taking out all of the backlash. So I just adjusted it there to split the difference. So I'm at about 12.5-ish. And if I come over here, I am about 10. So that's one thing about this process, is that it's very, very finicky. So you're gonna have to go back and forth quite a bit, double checking it and tightening these bolts down. So I sped that up for you. But what I have here, if I look, I am at 11.5 on this side. And if I spin this around here, I'm at 11 and just past 11. So I'm probably about 2-ish tenths off. So that's how I dial or tram in the head of my milling vise. This is a process that takes lots of practice, and it takes a lot of time the first few times you do it. So just be patient and just practice, and you'll be able to get it very quickly.